This video is designed to give an overview of basic electrical diagram reading. Looking at this electrical diagram, up in the upper left, VTX 1800F, this is the one that we'll be working with. Basically all wiring diagrams are the same. A couple things you should note is off on the right hand side you're going to see a few little legends, I guess. One is going to be for the wiring color and one's going to be for the fuse box. They could be basically anywhere on the diagram. Over here you're going to see another little diagram that has to do with the position of the switches and which leads are connected. We'll get into that in a little bit. First thing you should do when using a wiring diagram is get familiar with it. Just eyeball and read a few things. It'll give you an idea for how it's laid out. Looking at this, it's probably pretty hard to see on a video, but you're going to have the headlight on the left hand side, the tail lights are on the right hand side. Now that should give you a pretty good idea as far as how these are going to be laid out. It's kind of orientated the way the bike is. Not all of them are, but this one is pretty close. You also want to be able to find basic things like the battery. They're all labeled. You just need to take the time to sit down and read one. As far as finding out what it is that you're looking for, start simple. Find what it is that you're looking for. If your bike, the headlight doesn't turn on, find the headlight and trace those two wires back. Once you get to a point, it's going to either go through a contact, follow that wire back. Eventually it should either lead to a ground or the frame. Right now we're going to be taking a look right down here. This is where the battery's at. This is the wiring diagram exploded. It's the upper left hand corner, so we're just going to move all the way over to the lower right. Now earlier we talked about the fuse box. You can see here that the fuse box diagram basically has a bunch of fuses, different ones for different electrical components. If your fuel pump isn't turning on, you're worried about the fuse, you could come right over to this little legend and find out that it's the red and white wire, and that it's a 20 amp fuse, that it has carries the current for the fuel ignition and the fuel pump, fuel injection, ignition, and fuel pump. Down here you're also going to see the wiring legend. This is what tells you what's what as far as wiring color codes, and we'll zoom in and try and take a look at that. Notice black is BL, commonly confused with brown is BR, and blue is BU. So they don't just put a B on there and expect you to figure it out. Most of the wiring diagrams are set up that way. Go to Suzuki diagram, same thing, but you should have a legend. Now, getting on to where the battery is at. A lot of people have issues trying to find out what exactly it is that they're looking at, and all you have to do is spend a little bit of time to read it. First thing I'd tell somebody to do that's getting familiar with them is take a look right off your battery. You're going to notice one gigantic red wire. That red wire goes directly to your starter relay. You can see that right here. Okay, that big red wire goes to your relay, and when these contacts pull in, it completes the path going down to your starter motor. Now it's not very hard to figure out because right here it is labeled starter motor. Everything is labeled pretty decent. Next thing you want to take a look at is you have two smaller wires coming off the positive terminal of your battery, right here and right here. Off the ground side of your battery, you'll notice that it comes over and you have an engine ground. From the engine there is also a ground strap going to your frame. It doesn't tell you where it is, but it gives you the idea of what it is. Your job is to go over to the battery and find the ground that goes to the engine and find the hot lead that goes to the starter relay. This hot lead, since there's no switches up to the starter relay, this is hot all the time. It's not until this starter contactor right here is energized that it allows your engine to start. You're also going to notice on the back side, you can see the little wire come in and wrapped around here a couple times. That's a coil. It gets magnetized and either pushes or pulls the contacts on the starter relay. Now if you look just below that, you have a Y and R and a G and R. Now that tells me that I have a yellow wire and a red stripe. Hopefully you can see that pretty decent. Right there. Yellow wire with a red stripe, green wire with a red stripe. So it shouldn't be too hard to figure out. If you follow the lead down from the battery, it'll take you to the starter relay, and it will have 4 connections on it. The large red wire going from the battery to your starter motor, a yellow and red, and a green and red stripe. Now, on to the 2 smaller wires from your battery. It comes down, you'll see a red wire, and you'll see a red and yellow striped wire. Goes into a fuse. How do we know this is a symbol for a fuse? It's a pretty generic symbol for a fuse on all electrical diagrams, but even more so, you look down here and it is labeled 30 amp fuse. After that, red wire comes down along with the red and white wire. Notice it changed colors after the fuse and goes into this little square block. This little square block is a 2-pin connector. We know that because there's 2 wires, and even beyond that it says 2P, 2-pin. You're going to see it a couple other times. If you look off on the other side right there, you're going to see a 3P and a 2P, 3-pin and 2-pin right there. So they really do a pretty decent job labeling this stuff. It's just a matter of taking the time to sit down and learn it. We're going to follow out this red wire right here, and basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to color this in all the way and show you guys exactly what it is that I'm doing. I'll even fatten up my color for you so you can see it a little bit better. Something else that you'll probably notice on here is you're going to see a couple little dots like this one right here. That means it's a tie point. This wire crosses this wire, but this wire tees off and goes in this direction. So it's all the same circuit. If you have 12 volts on one wire, you're going to have 12 volts on the teed wire coming off. Just like I have here, you'll see a little splice line. You will notice comes down to that red wire and it continues off in this direction here. We're going to follow out this one for now. This one here comes down, goes through a single fuse, turns into a red and green wire, comes back out. So it's fused again. Continue. That's red and green wire. And R and G, it says backup. Hopefully you can see that. There you go. Right here it says backup. Now if you sit and think about it, that would be the power source for your trip meters and your clock. So it always has power on it. We never covered any switches.